Welcome to Idioms Learning First videos. Today we are going to learn 10 idioms with 10 sentences of each. Total 10 idioms with 100 sentences. Our 10 idioms are 1. All of a sudden. 2. All the same. 3. Overboard. 4. After all. 5. All the while. 6. At last. 7. At random. 8. As it were. 9. At a loss. 10. At best. All of a sudden. হঠাৎ বা আকস্মিকভাবে. All of a sudden, we heard an unearthly cry. All of a sudden, we heard an unearthly cry. All of a sudden, he turned about and saw me. All of a sudden, he turned about and saw me. He sprang out the room all of a sudden. He sprang out the room all of a sudden. All of a sudden, the car veered off the road. All of a sudden, the car veered over the road. He became serious all of a sudden. He became serious all of a sudden. All of a sudden, the light went out. All of a sudden, the lights went out. All of a sudden, the tire burst. All of a sudden, the tire burst. All of a sudden, my heart hurted against her. All of a sudden, my heart hardened against her. All of a sudden, I heard an almighty crash from the kitchen. All of a sudden, I heard an almighty crash from the kitchen. All of a sudden, someone grabbed me around the neck. All of a sudden, someone grabbed me around the neck. All the same. একই রূপ বা একই কথা. It's all the same to me. It's all the same to me. You mean are all the same. You mean are all the same. If it's all the same to you, I will go with wicked. If it is all the same to you, I will go with wicked. Do you want all the same kind or a mixture? Do you want all the same kind or a mixture? Whether you win or lose, it's all the same to me. Whether they win or lose, it's all the same to me. The plots of his books are basically all the same. The plots of his books are basically all the same. I'll have tea if it is all the same to you. I'll have tea if it is all the same to you. Well, though, all the same. Well, though, all the same. All the same, she was late for breakfast. All the same, she was late for breakfast. Yet all the same, progress resulted. Yet all the same, progress resulted. overboard. প্রকাশ্য বা সন্দেহাতীত। The deal was completely overboard. The deal was completely overboard. Be open and overboard with me. Be open and overboard with me. Everything is overboard except the strategy. Everything is overboard except the strategy. It's all overboard, Rosie. It's all overboard, Rosie. My business dealing are overboard. My business dealing are overboard. You know that all was fair and overboard. You know that all was fair and overboard. As long as overboard, I have nothing to say. As long as overboard, I have nothing to say. The king was an overboard man. The king was an overboard man. She did not act overboard. She did not act overboard. Everything he did was overboard. Everything he did was overboard. After all, তা সত্ত্বেও, the world is but a little place after all. The world is but a little place after all. After all, a hero is man. After all, a hero is human. After all this time, it's still you. After all this time, it's still you. The threatening strike did not take place after all. The threatening strike did not take place after all. They feel here after all their hard work. They feel here after all their hard work. After all the guests had left, I swept off. After all the guests had left, I swept off. She were too much. It's spring. After all, she were too much. It's spring after all. Never willing to wailing after all or not. Never willing to wailing after all or not. Inside it's gloomy after all that sunshine. Inside it's gloomy after all that sunshine. We have decided not to go away after all. We have decided not to go away after all. All the while. All the while. সর্বক্ষণ. All the while I was actually aware of her necklace. All the while I was actually aware of her necklace. He teach English in the school all the while. He teaches English in the school all the while. They walked back together, walking, talking all the while. They walked back together, talking all the while. All the while, she and Edwin were courting. All the while, she and Edwin were courting. All the while, I was in college. John was traveling. All the while, I was in college. John was traveling. All the while, her father was reciting. Her lips moved slightly. All the while, her father was reciting. Her lips moved slightly. The bird hopped across the lake, keeping a sharp lookout all the while. The bird hopped across the lake, keeping a sharp look all the while. All the while, the people at the next table watched me eat. All the while, the people at the next table watched me eat. At last, অবশেষে, they have lived together must die. They that live together must die at last. They that live together must die at last. Long looked for comes at last. Long looked for comes at last. He managed to squeeze though the crowd at last. He managed to squeeze though the crowd at last. At last I was able to work undisturbed. At last I was able to work undisturbed. At last the rain began to ease off. At last the rain began to ease off. Who could forget his speech at last year party? Who could forget his speech at last year party? At last they chewed, working for lack of capital. At last they ceased, working for lack of capital. At last my voice feel like sniffing. At last my voice feel like sniffing. At last the guest began to arrive. At last the guest began to arrive. I have finished my essay at last. I have finished my essay at last. At random. At random. এলোমেলো ভাবে. Men were picked at random out of a hat. Men were picked at random out of a hat. The gangs picked their victim at random. The gangs picked their victims at random. They fired at random into the enemy's rank. They fired at random into the enemy's rank. The terrorist fired into the crowd at random. The terrorist fired into the crowd at random. Names were chosen at random from a list. Names were chosen at random from a list. At random, I opened an earlier page. At random, I opened an earlier page. Those standing in line draw number at random. Those standing in line draw numbers at random. As it were, যেন বা বলতে গেলে। A friend is as it were a second self. A friend is as it were a second self. He is as it were a walking dictionary. He is as it were a walking dictionary. He became as it were a man without a country. He became as it were a man without a country. He cornered the market in heroes as it were. He cornered the market in heroes as it were. The basic chore as it were are there. The basic chore as it were are there. He was there as it were in reflection. He was there as it were in reflection. To pursue the big picture as it were. To pursue the big picture as it were. A rite of passage as it were. A rite of passage as it were. He is my best friend, my second self as it were. He is my best friend, my second self as it were. At a loss, at a loss. হতবুদ্ধি বা কিংকর্ত বিমূর্খ। I am at a loss for word. I am at a loss for words. I am at a loss as to what to do. I am at a loss as to what to do. I am at a loss as to what to say. I am at a loss as to what to say. Two of the mind are running at a loss. Two of the mind are running at a loss. Mary is at a loss what to do next. Mary is at a loss what to do next. They must sell the goods at a loss. They must sell the goods at a loss. I am at a loss what to do next. I am at a loss what to do next. His comment left me at a loss for what? His comment left me at a loss for what word? We are now opening at a loss. We are now opening at a loss. I am at a loss to know how I can help you. I am at a loss to know how can I help you. At best. At best. Borojor. The script was workmanlike at best. The script was workmanlike at best. We can arrive before Friday at best. We can't arrive before Friday at best. Their response to the proposal was at best cool. Their response to the proposal was at best cool. The camping was at best only partially successful. The campaign was at best only partially successful. At best, sales have been good but not great. At best, sales have been good but not great. Public transportation is at best limited. Public transportation is at best limited. The information highway is a rough road at best. The information highway is a rough road at best. Well, it had been a forlorn hope at best. Well, it had been a forlorn hope at best. If so, it seems ill-mannered at best. If so, it seems ill-mannered at best. The story, hardly positive, is at best equivocal. The story, hardly positive, is at best equivocal. যদি ভিডিওটি ভালো লেগে থাকে তাহলে অবশ্যই ভিডিওটিকে লাইক দিবেন এবং চ্যানেলটিকে সাবস্ক্রাইব করবেন। ধন্যবাদ।